Hey everybody, this is Nirali Shah and welcome to the New Gen Perspective in Ramayan. And you're going to be watching episode 5. I hope you've watched the previous episodes of Ramayan and New Gen Perspective on my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel, Alchemy of Being. I welcome you to today's episode. Let me know if you've joined me, if you're here. Just, send a love, send a heart, send a like, and you will see me in a minute. It's been a little while. I've been live with Ramayan episode. Just let me know if you're here with me, and let me know if you can hear me. You're watching episode 5 of Ramayan New Gen Perspective with Nirali Shah. Before I show up on the screen, before I enter into today's episode of Benevolent Crown Prince, I would like to remind you of all that we have gone through so far in this New Gen Perspective, and the way to interact with this series of mine with the New Gen Perspective and the information that I'm tapping into. If at all you've seen my intercession and previous episodes, I've shared that the idea is to not just, ask for the words or, expect visuals in the normal way of storytelling, but rather connecting to the energy that I'm tapping into of that era, of that time and space. And my effort here is to actually bring in a very different perspective that we have lost in the process of, the entire story went through this, the shifts and changes depending upon the different timeline that it traveled through before it reached us. And, it's my effort to re-establish or recreate that era and that time and the functions of that time through this perspective, and also bring in more practical aspects that connects with where we are headed as society, as culture, as planet. And in the last couple of years, so much has shifted. So much has changed on our planet, on our earth, the way we live, the way we function, and also the means of leadership. And that's exactly where we are heading today. And that's somewhere, is also the reason why we recall characters and beings like Ram and Krishna, who actually showed us a very different way of being in the time, in the space, with people, with relationships, with own self. And with that, let me see if you can. Hi everybody, I am on the screen. So great to see you. I hope you're with me. If not now, in future. So connect with the energy as we begin our journey. So we're going to the recap, connect with energy. More than the words, it's about me showing you that different era, taking you into that time. If at all you connect to the energy that I'm willing to, tap into at this point, and share it with all of you. And do not expect the story in any ways like the normal storytelling. It's different, so you'll have to tap into the difference that this version of Ramayana is. All right. So far we traveled through Ram's journey of his birth, his education, the different um, level of education that existed in that time, how holistic it was, to his hands-on experience with his this lifetime's enemies, morally called demons, and killing of Tarka and other demons, uh, learning from Rishi Valmiki and Vishwamitra, and that entire journey, also taking him to visit um, Mithila, the city of Janak, and the beautiful daughter Princess Sita, and finally showing his power, his strength, and breaking this very known divine weapon, Shiva's weapon, that is the bow, and winning the Rishi Parshuram, um, marrying Sita, and in fact bringing beautiful allies home by marrying Sita and her sisters, making Ayodhya a more powerful um, empire, powerful country as in general, by associating in a very loving way uh, with Mithila and other uh, countries, like Janak's cousins and their kingdoms. So, well, all the four brothers are now traveling back to Ayodhya with their spouses and settling down as princes, and seeing the entire journey of Ram by from traveling to the forest with Vishwamitra, killing Tarka, to showing his capacity with a divine weapon. He had somewhere, though he was always loved as a prince, as a child, as a student, this kind of added up to people recognizing who he is. So even before they reached Ayodhya, uh, his all his adventures were already being told and retold in many ways to the city of, or to in fact all of his empire, to the nearby kingdoms, somewhere shaking the foundation of all the kingdoms and all the kings who at all considered Ayodhya being being a city or being a country who could be won over, or also showing uh, the level of strength that the prince of Ayodhya has, with the different capacities, with different skills, which could also win over the divine weapons, and also win over the heart of Parshuram, also create allies with somebody as Parshuram, who is so powerful and so fierce, and most kingdoms were afraid of him. So just by some actions, just by some, and that too by a young prince. He's not even yet a king, and he's showing and exhibiting such strength, such skills, such capacity. Now, with all of this, now definitely Dashrath and his team of wise people, his ministers, do find that it's time for Ram to be crowned prince. They prepare, they announce Ram to be the crown prince of Ayodhya. And with that, though already after returning from Rishi Vashishta's hermitage, Ram and princes like Bharat, Shatrughna, and Lakshman were already taking care of small responsibilities in the kingdom. And yet, with Ram being becoming the crown prince, obviously his responsibilities were raised. Crown prince means the one who's going to take care of the kingdom, the empire, and his people after the king Dashrath. And that means, uh, obviously taking care of the legacy of the Sun dynasty and all that, his ancestors did, but also doing better. And even though he was, so capable and people knew about his capacities, well, he still had, Dashrath and his people and the court still had to see and train him of various ways of leading people into creating a better society, creating better kingdom, in terms of business, in terms of planning, in terms of expanding, in terms of their individual growth, in terms of farming, all areas of life that a kingdom requires to flourish and prosper. And so, Ram were given more responsibilities, and his brothers were, asked to, become his strength. So, Lakshman, Bharat, Shatrughna, well, all together as a team, well, they carry forward the task. Now, what are the things that people begin to see as Ram takes over the responsibilities of a crown prince? And there's some of this natural talents that he exhibited, which any leader must, um, must have, if at all a leader is looking into creating a very pragmatic, a very proactive culture, a culture that is change driven, the culture that is driven with inspiration, a culture that is really taking care of each other rather than having conflicts within each other. And what does a leader, what are the qualities of a leader, and what qualities Ram exhibited for us to, even for our timeline, even for us, even after so many years, for us to look up to him and perhaps even learn from him. So one of the things that we've always, even if when we watch Ramayan and characters on the TV, one of the things that the actors must enact and project and express, and that is his kindness and patience. Now, kindness is not about going and helping anybody and everybody, and being compassionate and letting people not stand up for themselves and letting people be the victim, but rather being kind to empower people in a totally different way. So one of the things Ram had, and one of the qualities that he exhibited while dealing as a crown prince and with his responsibilities, and that was being patient while he handled people. So one of the things was actually observing and recognizing the strengths and qualities his people had, with patience, with observation, with vision and openness, not creating judgments, not creating opinions about certain things, and also not imposing own opinions on people. The first thing that he would do would be to actually observe how his people are like, how his ministers are like, how his staff is like, what is it that they have to say, what are the weaknesses, what are the strengths, and all of them studying, learning about them very, very patiently, before even coming to any decision, before even creating um, any plans. So that is one thing, and we are going to see this quality unfolding as we move forward in the story, how in each area and each challenge that he faced, um, and when he required to take aggressive action, he was aggressive. So he wasn't like trying to um, enact that he is kind and patient. He knew when he has to be patient. He knew when he has to be aggressively patient. So patience is an inner quality, something that you're being as a leader, and uh, so there's so many things that encompasses the word patience. When I say Ram was being he was being a patient, observant leader uh, when it came to making decisions. Another thing that he exhibited was curiosity. As I said, being patient and constantly learning and observing. Also, as a leader, it is very essential to be curious about the unexplored avenues, because it's the curiosity that actually leads you to any kind of a creative uh, idea. Even it's a curiosity that allows a leader to invite creativity. And any kingdom, any empire flourishes when it allows creative leadership. And not just that I'm being creative and I would do it, but it's about how each of your um, uh, each of the responsible person or the specific task is being creative, and as a leader inspiring that creativity in your leaders. So he was being that. Now how he's going to do that, how he does that, is something that I'm looking forward to express in in the journey in the further. But then the first thing that I really like to talk about is the qualities that he exhibited. So curiosity. After that, uh, at all, recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of people and developing and nurturing talent. So even if a very a common man, a layman, a nobody, if as a leader spotting the talent and capacity of the person and nurturing it to its fullest, is one of the qualities of the leader. Even if the person has no references of past work, but at all there is a seed. It's a good leader's role, responsibility, to actually flourish that talent in the greater good of the kingdom, for society. And Ram had all the eyes for talents, and he knew who would do what, and all of this he's just simply right now learning in his kingdom. He's just learning how, and showing small part of these capacities, but these seeds somewhere come very much in handy as he proceeds in his journey. So he liked to develop individual talents. He didn't like somebody has to be like him, or he didn't want people to become copies of each other. He liked individuality, and he appreciated talent. He gave people opportunities at the right time who are worthy of taking up the responsibility. other thing which Ram did was recognizing minute contributions of his people. So even if a small farmer or a blacksmith or um, you know any mundane business owner, when they did something that contributed greatly to the functions of the kingdom, when they came up with a greater idea that could flourish the business, flourish the way of farming, and in that time, they did have a sort of a technology that would help people to make their life easy, not the way we have right now, but definitely there were technologies, there were systems, there were architectural ideas to create farming in a certain way. Like if at all we look into these Harappan and the sculptures, how they had built their city, the gutter system, the water system, they had all of this, and that was a role of a king too, to create a very friendly and sufficient systems and structures for his people, and not only in Ayodhya, in all the kingdoms that Ayodhya takes care of, because Ayodhya is the capital of everything that Dashrath's kingdom was. Um, Also, one of the qualities he exhibited was promoting culture and learning. So, if at all, first thing is that he himself was a great learner. So he himself showed his people, his subordinates, his leaders, his brothers, that it's always a continuous journey of learning as a leader. So it's not that you've been a crown prince and you're done, you know everything. So always learning, listening to people, learning from his brother's opinions. Even he and Sita, because Sita was quite learned, she was a wise princess, and to be king of Ayodhya, even she had some great visions and ideas in many areas. And so Ram was a great listener, and just by he being that, he also uh, started promoting that with the people he worked with, um, uh, in his subordinates, in his ministers, and his leaders, in his army, and the leaders of his army, how they have to continuously keep learning, upgrading themselves, and do not hesitate for a minute to take advice, to take guidance, to get mentorship. And that's why Ram's, first teacher was Rishi Vashishta, but he also went on and learned things from Vishwamitra, from Parshuram. So he never stopped learning. He knew that if this person has the capacity and the experience of something that would add to me being a better leader or being a better person, then he would go and without hesitation learn that. So that was one of the beautiful, and he is not stopping even after learning from Parshuram. He was like the teacher. And if you've seen Mahabharata or read Mahabharata, and many mythological stories, well, Parshuram is considered to be one of the greatest teachers and the masters of that era. Had a very, very long time lifeline. But even after that, he hadn't put up a full stop to his learning, his education. He would know, he would choose when he's going to go take learnings from his father. So he wouldn't, because now he's a crown prince and he's a young person, so he's going to stop listening to, how Dashratha did in, his old ways. Well, he knows when he has to go and learn from his father. He knows when he has to go and take advice from Rishi Vashishta. He knows when he has to speak to a certain ministers, a group of people. He knows when he has to also take advice and suggestions and views from his people, from his wife, from his brothers, when to involve whom. And that entire um, way of functioning automatically added to in the system of how people around him function too. So that was one of the beautiful things that uh, uh, Ram functioned from as a crown prince. Now, in the today's perspective of management, leadership is kind of defined in two ways. One is a transactional leadership, and the other one is a transformational leadership. Now, why I'm bringing in this concept, because at all, you are studying management or marketing or HR or any kind of an administrative field, or if at all you are actually a leader, whether it's being leader in school, taking care of some small tasks, being a class monitor, to actually leading as having your own startup where you have to deal with different people, agencies. This is the term, and this is the interaction that you would constantly have. And that's where it's kind of important to learn these two words. So transactional leadership is about motivating people with certain valuable give and take that works in both of our advantage. So I have a certain goal, and if any agency or any my employees or my organization, my people in my organization, my staff, who would help me accomplish that, and in return they get certain perks, they get certain benefits which would help them to feel motivated to suffice their present day need, be it in terms of appreciation, be it in terms of um, fulfilling their financial requirements or their growth, as like in the professional world, it could be that. Transformational leadership is a very different level of leading people who are with you in achieving a certain goal. Now, here the leader expresses, or rather articulates, the vision first. It's like, this is where we are going and who's with me. And in this journey, the leader's role is to create an environment that automatically inspires individuals or the staff, organizational members, people, employees to take self-inspired creative steps to create something greater that even leader hasn't defined. Because the only thing that together a transformational leader is indicating or showing is a great vision, a large vision, that's a point where we all are reaching to create something that flourishes everybody's life. And Also, here the leader knows when to bring in transactional leadership, but not being limited to that. So, if you cannot suffice, um, if you cannot suffice, my goal, then you are an invaluable product. It doesn't happen with the transformational leadership. And so societies, cultures, groups transform as an individual, and they automatically want to do something. So there is no external motivation required for people to function and achieve the goal. They are self-motivated in that process to go with the leader. And that's the kind of a leader Ram was. Wherever he went, whoever he dealt with, um, he uh, he was automatically being loved and appreciated because he recognized the value in each person, and he knew when and where to add them to create a greater society, to create greater function, to create greater planning. So what are the things that Ram, got involved as a crown prince? Well, there were certain business strategies, creating allies in the neighboring countries, um, um, having better functions in the court, in the courts systems as well, having hierarchy, or bringing shift and change in the hierarchy and decision making, um, uh, in the ways where people are heard, their views are heard, their issues are heard, and they are incorporated in the changes that um, that they were making, the plans that they were making to create prosperous empire. So how, like, a sun, when he appears in the sky every morning, his role is to make sure that uh, everybody receives his light, everybody receives his energy, so that their um, their crops grow, the water evaporates, so that there is a better rain, so that earth is freed from any sort of unwanted fungus and any sort of unwanted uh, energies, toxicities that has erupted, that has come up during the nightfall. Every everyone has a vision to not fumble on the way, but there is a clarity to where they are going, what they're doing. That's the role a sun plays every day, and that's why we wait for the morning, and we wait that our most of our functions will take place in the morning. Even though in the present time we have electricity, we can do very well in the night time, but day time and the sunlight plays a very important role, including it plays role in how our bodies function, how healthy we remain. If at all sun disappeared for few days, we would start having issues in the body. Also, if sun decided that I would only give my light to certain people and not give my light to the others, well, what would happen? So sun is a great example of leadership, and following the Sun dynasty, Ram was somewhere very beautifully taking care of his role as a crown prince. Now, with all of this in purview, King Dashrath now began to see that Ram is getting ready to, be crowned a king, and also that now it is time for him to retire and look into how he's going to grow, how he's going to introspect his life. have a peaceful time meditating and enjoying his existence on the earth. Now this is a time where kings knew when to retire. A great leader knows when to step in, and the great leader knows when to step out. So obviously Dashrath was one such visionary king who did great in his time, but also he knew that now it's time for him to focus on himself and his personal journey, and he can definitely now retire by giving responsibility to Ram, as now he is showing all the qualities of a good king, a good leader, and he will be fine and happy and satisfied that his sons will take care of his kingdom better than how he ruled or how he led them. So one fine day, Dashrath invites all the ministers and wise people of his court, and he puts forth the idea that I would like now to retire and focus on my personal journey, on my individual growth, on my spiritual growth, and I would like to, now crown Ram king. And what do you think about it? And the moment he presented his idea, everybody, including Rishi Vashishta and all his ministers, welcomed warmly the idea that yes, we can definitely now handle being with Ram, because it's not about just coming to the status of being a leader or being a king. It's also that people who are already been functioning, already been working in that system, feeling comfortable, feeling loved, feeling connected to the coming leader. And when they said that, Dashrath knew that it's a perfect time to take this decision. And so he then called upon Ram, and he said, well, I have a very important news for you. I would like to retire, and I would like you to take care of Ayodhya and its people now. And obviously Ram knew that someday he would be taking care of this responsibility, and he was preparing himself for that, and he was doing wonderful. And when time came, he said, of course, Dad, whenever you say, I will take that place, and will make sure that I do better than how our ancestors function, how you rule this kingdom. And the moment Ram and Dashrath has this conversation, the news was spread of Ram's coronation day in all of Ayodhya and the entire kingdom, and people rejoiced this news, as they were so looking forward for Ram to be the king. They were so looking forward to be part of the rulership of Ram. And this is where when everybody is preparing for Ram's coronation, something is kind of a different kind of path opens up, because it's not yet time for Ram to just sit and rule Ayodhya. Well, he has something else to take care of. So that is something that we're going to talk about in episode 6. What happens and how the Ram's journey takes an entire twist and leads him into a different direction. So I hope this content, today's information, was something that would help you see Ram in a different way. We have a habit of looking at Ram as a lord, and what he did, only he can do. Well, he was born as a human, in the human form, with human strength, exhibiting greater human qualities with his example, so that we as humans or human beings know that greater strength, the divine strength, is within every human being, and it can only be empowered. It can be if one is willing to learn through these qualities, one is willing to tap into that part of them, it's possible to uh, create that kind of a leadership, that kind of an era that brings together uh, all all of life on the planet. It works towards creating a future that he envisioned just in his time of being a crown prince. And the role of any leader is not just to create small temporary results. A true leader is where they are creating something for now and something for the future, some 10,000 years uh, uh, in the coming. So, well, that is what he was, and that's why we still remember Ram. We still, listen to his saga. We still, give his examples, because he lived as a leader who is alive. He finished his lifetime, he finished his life's work, he finished his karma, so he's just light at this moment. But even then his stories are alive, even there his examples are still shared, because he didn't, while being the prince, while being the king, he just did not do anything for that time and era. He actually was creating today that we are in, with his work, with his vision, with his actions, with his intentions. And that is the beauty of a leader. And you see many such leaders in our history. And I'm so fortunate to be connecting to Ram at this point on a totally different level, tapping into that time, era, and energy, talking about the kind of greatness that he was as a leader. So we'll see you in episode 6, the day after tomorrow, or perhaps on Monday. And take care, enjoy, and hope the story inspires some great leader in you. Bye bye.